Once upon a time, in a small village called Kureru, there lived a little girl named Tamara. Tamara was born into a poor peasant family. Her father was a local farmer who worked on other people's lands and was paid for his labor. Her mother was a merchant who sold vegetables and other essential goods at the local Kureru market. Tamara was the sixth of 8 children. Despite the size of the family, her parents managed to send 5 of their children to school, and Tamara, being one of the youngest, had the privilege of being among the chosen ones. The 3 older siblings were sent to different cities to learn a trade. Every evening without fail, Tamara's father, Mr. Kami, would gather all his children around him after dinner and tell them stories about the city and the important people he knew who had become wealthy by going to school and then moving to the city. "Do you know Mr. Udoka?" he would say. "The one I worked for on his farm last week? He studied hard in school, and today he's a very wealthy doctor in the city. Everyone wants to go to his hospital." These stories about school and the city fascinated Tamara from a young age. Because of this growing fascination, Tamara was very serious about her studies. She always stood out as the top student during exams, much to the amazement of her teachers and even the school's administration. Her teachers adored her because she worked so hard, and little Tamara never hesitated to give her all, as she had one goal in mind: to get good grades and go to the city one day. One day, Tamara came home from school in her brown uniform and noticed an unusual pair of shoes in front of the family home. She immediately understood that there was a visitor, but the quality of the shoes suggested they belonged to someone wealthy or of great fortune. She entered the house and found herself face to face with a very beautiful woman dressed in an expensive gown. She wore colorful makeup and a lovely wig, her nails were painted, and she carried a small black bag with golden embroidery on the edges. The young woman smiled upon seeing Tamara and said, "Tamara, my dear, look how much you've grown," she exclaimed with great enthusiasm. At that moment, Tamara's mother, who was in the kitchen, entered the living room with a tray of food and placed it in front of the visitor. Tamara greeted her mother and the visitor. "Tamara," her mother began, "this is Aunt Bose, your father's younger sister." Tamara's face lit up with excitement upon learning that this elegant woman was part of her family. "She's come from the city to visit your father," her mother added. Tamara's ears perked up at the word city. Instantly, Tamara was drawn to Aunt Bose. With her childlike innocence, she asked, "Auntie, will you take me to the city too?" Everyone burst into laughter, and Aunt Bose, as any aunt would, made a promise to Tamara. "If you get good grades at school and an excellent diploma, I'll come get you and take you to the city," she said with a smile. The adults laughed at her innocence, but deep inside Tamara, a fire had been ignited. It was her light at the end of the tunnel, if she ever wanted to go to the city. A few hours later, Aunt Bose left for the city. She had brought many gifts for the family, and Tamara's parents were delighted and prayed sincerely for her as she departed. From the moment she met Aunt Bose, Tamara became even more serious about her studies. She spent little time playing and was always immersed in her books. She was never late for class and always finished first in her class. Aunt Bose took a special interest in Tamara and began paying her school fees to ease the burden on her parents. From time to time, she returned to the village to visit them with plenty of gifts. When Tamara turned 18 and was in her final year of high school, she achieved the best results in her class. The school, her teachers, and her parents were very proud of her, but her own excitement was boundless. All Tamara could think about was sharing the good news with Aunt Bose. "Finally, I'm going to the city," she thought to herself constantly. When Aunt Bose heard the news, she was thrilled and overjoyed. She sent gifts to Tamara to congratulate her on her achievements. A month after her graduation, Aunt Bose returned to the village to take Tamara to the city, as she had promised years earlier. Her departure from the village was a mix of emotions. She was leaving with the fear of not seeing her parents again, but she was excited about starting a new life elsewhere, far from Kureru, where she had grown up. When the bus entered the famous city of Utaka, Tamara couldn't help but stare in awe at the tall buildings, event centers, and luxurious cars. Aunt Bose lived in a large 2-bedroom apartment with practically every amenity a woman could dream of. She was indeed wealthy and elegant. It didn't take long for Tamara to adjust to city life. Although she came from the village, she was very intelligent and had gained knowledge about city life through school. Her main duties were to clean the house and perform other household chores, which she did efficiently. She was excited to have arrived at the place of her dreams and fantasies. Every night she thought about how she would return to the village wealthy and spend money on her parents. However, after 3 months of living with Bose, Tamara began to worry. Bose hadn't said anything about her education or her plans for her since arriving in the city. She felt like she was being used as a domestic worker instead of fulfilling the real reason she had come to the city. Yet, there was something about Aunt Bose that troubled her deeply. She had never heard Bose talk about her job, her office, or what she did for a living, or worse still, Bose would leave the house late at night and return very early in the morning, yet she never seemed to lack money, always having an abundant supply. One fateful evening, in the 5th month of her stay with Bose, Aunt Bose called Tamara to the living room for a private conversation. She had a very serious expression and was seated on the couch when Tamara sat down. Aunt Bose began, "Bose, I know you're probably wondering how I make the money that allows us to live in this house," she said, her gaze becoming more intense as she looked at Tamara. Tamara nodded. "Well, I'll get straight to the point. Instead of giving you fish, as I've done for the past 5 months, I'm going to teach you how to fish in the city," she declared. Tamara's eyes widened with excitement. She had been waiting for this moment since she set foot in Utica. In fact, she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. She leaned forward, excited and serious, wanting to pay close attention to everything Bose was about to say. At that moment, Aunt Bose stood up, closed the windows and curtains, and returned to her seat, still as serious. "Tamara," she began, "I'm in the business of Hupe," she declared abruptly. Tamara was confused. She had never heard of such a business. Out of curiosity and naivety, she asked, "Auntie, what's Hupe? And how does it work?" A smile appeared on Bose's lips. Tamara was innocent, but she would have to sacrifice that innocence if she wanted to make it in this city. "Let's just say it's a business where men pay you to satisfy them sexually, and they give you substantial sums of money for your services," Bose added bluntly. Tamara's eyes widened in shock, and she covered her mouth with her hands. "Oh my God! You mean prostitution?" she added, stunned. "Not prostitution," Bose retorted immediately, almost angrily. "Prostitutes have to stand on the side of the road waiting for men. In H-Up, they contact you for your services. If you're good, they recommend you to their richer friends. It's like any other service-based job." Tamara couldn't believe her ears. She was shocked to her core. "Is this really why I came to the city?" she whispered to herself. Bose interrupted her thoughts. "Do you like your parents' living conditions? Every day, your father works from farm to farm. Your mother is under the scorching sun selling her goods, and your siblings are struggling to make it through school. Now, this golden opportunity is in front of you. It's your choice, Tamara. I'll let you think about it and give me your answer tomorrow morning," she said before leaving a completely stunned Tamara in the living room. That night, Tamara couldn't sleep. She was emotionally overwhelmed by the weight of the revelation her aunt had just made. Even though Bose's lifestyle was an obvious clue, Tamara couldn't see herself selling her body, no matter the price. From that day, Bose's attitude toward Tamara changed. She became more aggressive over the slightest mistake, deprived Tamara of food, and stopped all financial support she had been providing to her family. Tamara wasn't surprised. She had expected this after refusing Bose's offer a few days earlier. According to Bose, Tamara had refused to learn how to fish, and would therefore be treated as lazy. One day, news reached Tamara that her father was gravely ill. He had been bitten by a venomous snake while working on a farm. He was taken to the local hospital, but according to the hospital's rules, no treatment would be provided without a deposit. He needed urgent care, or he would die within hours. They had tried to contact Bose, but her phone was off. So they contacted Tamara using the small mobile phone her parents had bought her before she left for the city. Tamara was in shock, unsure of what to do. She tried calling her aunt, but her phone remained off. As panic overwhelmed her and hot tears streamed down her face at the thought of losing her father, Bose returned home. Tamara, still trembling and panicked, told her everything. Bose was also surprised and confirmed the situation with a phone call. After hanging up, she looked at Tamara knowingly and said, "You want to help your family now?" Tamara nodded affirmatively. At that moment, she was ready to do anything to save her father. Bose smiled and picked up her phone. In less than a minute, she was on the line with a man. A few minutes later, she said to Tamara, "You're lucky. This Alhaji needs company now. Go get ready quickly so we don't lose my brother." That was how Tamara was introduced to the HUP business. Bose lent her clothes and applied light makeup. Tamara's transformation was impressive. After this makeover, Bose took her to the bus station. It was already dark when a black Mercedes SUV pulled up in front of them. The back window rolled down, and an older man looked at them through the window. Bose exchanged a few words with him and introduced him to Tamara, whose mind was still overwhelmed by her father's situation. The Alhaji seemed satisfied and invited Tamara to get into the vehicle. He took her to his place, spent the night with her, and gave her a substantial sum of money, $12,500. Tamara was stunned. She had never seen or held such an amount in her life. The next morning, the Alhaji dropped her off at the same bus station where he had picked her up the previous night, and Bose came to get her. Without hesitation, Tamara asked about her father, and Bose replied, "Don't worry, someone took care of it last night." Tamara was both shocked and relieved. She called her parents and was relieved to hear that her father was recovering quickly. The truth was that after Tamara left, Bose had paid the medical bills. She was already tired of taking care of Tamara and felt she was old enough to learn how to fish. All day, Tamara couldn't stop thinking about the money she had received for just one night. This business is really lucrative, she thought. But one question kept haunting her. Why would a man be willing to part with such a large sum just to spend a night with a woman? She hadn't really thought it through. Bose, who had received a percentage of the money for what she called referral fees, began teaching Tamara the ropes of the trade and recommending more clients and wealthy men to her. Overnight, the poor and shy Tamara became rich, moving from one phone call to another, from one bed to another. Her lifestyle improved significantly. Every week, she sent her parents a large allowance, bought them gifts, and provided food supplies. Tamara's parents were very proud of her, even though they never asked how she earned her money. They thought city life was as easy as picking money off the street, so it wasn't surprising that their daughter was succeeding like so many others before her. Quickly, Tamara became a high-class slay queen, and only elites and politicians could afford her services, which translated into even more money as she raised her rates for her high-profile clients. Less than 15 months after arriving in the city, Tamara had bought a house worth millions of naira. A few weeks later, she launched a large construction project in her village for her parents. Her sudden success was the talk of the entire village of Kureru. Tamara was even more sought after than Bose, who had introduced her to the trade. But this caused neither resentment nor jealousy, as both continued to earn commissions from each of Tamara's clients. It was a win-win situation for them both. During all these years in the business, Tamara had learned an essential lesson from Bose: never fall in love while working, and never get pregnant. It was easy to understand why. Getting pregnant would mean at least a few months, if not years, of work interruption, and falling in love would force her to stop her activities or provide her services for free. Tamara followed this rule blindly. She had become so obsessed with money that she saw no point in having a man in her life. One day, while Tamara and Bose were dining in the living room, a call came in. It was a client who, in addition to her services, wanted to have a relationship with her and possibly marry her, an offer Tamara had rejected multiple times. Despite her repeated refusals, the client continued to request her services, and that day was no exception. After negotiations, Tamara went to her client's place. After their encounter, she was paid and left. However, what Tamara didn't know was that the client hadn't taken the necessary precautions to prevent pregnancy. Tamara left his house, thrilled by the $8,000 alert she had just received on her phone, and began dreaming about her next shopping spree for the upcoming weekend. But after a few weeks, Tamara started noticing changes in her body. She was vomiting often, constantly felt dizzy and tired, and her appetite had increased. She ignored the signs, thinking it was just malaria. She took malaria medication, but the symptoms persisted. Bose became suspicious and advised Tamara to take a pregnancy test, as it had been a little over 2 months and she was still showing symptoms despite the medication. Tamara laughed it off, joking that she was too careful and professional to make such a foolish mistake. But when the symptoms persisted after a few more days, she finally went to the clinic for a test. "Oh God, please let it be negative," she whispered to herself while patiently waiting for the lab technicians to complete the test. Shortly after, a young nurse entered the room and gestured for her to come to the doctor's office. Sitting down curiously, she stared at the doctor, who smiled at her before extending his hand and saying, "Congratulations, madam. You are 2 months pregnant." Tamara was shocked and tried to force a smile. "How? I still see my period. How is this possible?" she asked. The doctor explained, "Yes, madam. It's possible. You have cervical irritation, which means the bleeding isn't due to your menstruation but to sexual activity during pregnancy. During this period, your cervix becomes more sensitive than usual, causing this bleeding." Tamara was stunned. She thought about an abortion, but the doctor told her the pregnancy was too advanced, and attempting anything at this stage could endanger her life. Tamara felt overwhelmed, blaming herself for her negligence. Worse still, she had no idea who the father was. She had been with dozens of clients over the past 3 weeks, making it impossible to know who was responsible for the pregnancy. When Bose heard the news, she was perplexed, but, unlike Tamara, had a different perspective. "I think you should keep it," Bose said, trying to comfort Tamara. "Why?" "This pregnancy automatically puts a stop to my activities for at least 9 months, Tamara replied. Bose added, "One day, you'll stop anyway, and this child could become your source of joy, or even your support when you're older. Plus, you have enough to take care of him or her." But Tamara hated the idea. The whole reason she hadn't fallen in love was to enjoy her freedom, and not getting pregnant was also to avoid being tied to a child's needs. She just wanted to enjoy her freedom and her money. Tamara decided to give birth to the child, but promised herself she wouldn't keep it. She had to stop her activities and hated the changes her body was undergoing. All those years of maintaining and building the perfect figure were disappearing in a matter of weeks, filling her with hatred for her unborn child. She also hated her pregnancy cravings, wanting to eat goat's head one moment, fishtail the next, or even the burnt bits at the bottom of the pot. She wasn't happy, and the pregnancy mood swings didn't help. Above all, she hated not knowing who the father was. After 9 months, Tamara gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The baby was so beautiful that even the other pregnant women congratulated her. But Tamara was happy for a different reason. She was finally free. Those 9 months of being unable to work and living like a ghost had been pure hell for her. She spent her days calculating how much she could have earned if she had been able to work. The natural maternal bond was absent in Tamara, and all she could think about was leaving the hospital and informing her clients that she was back in business. Bose had supported her throughout the process until her discharge from the hospital. Once home, Tamara kept wondering what to do next. She didn't want to become a mother. She wasn't ready, especially after hearing so many stories about sagging breasts due to breastfeeding, a critical asset in her profession. That night, after breastfeeding her baby, Tamara wrapped her in baby clothes, placed her in a small basket, added some money, baby supplies, and everything she deemed necessary. She slipped out in the middle of the night and drove to an orphanage in the city. It was dark as she stood by the gate of the foundation. She looked at the baby in the basket and whispered, "I'm sorry, but these people will be better parents than me. I wish you good luck." She placed the baby near the gate, knocked loudly, then got back into her car and drove away. Tamara felt relieved to finally reclaim her life. The next day, Bose asked about the baby, and Tamara told her plainly what she had done. Bose was shocked and disappointed. "Tamara, despite all my advice, you still did what you had in mind," she said, dejected. "Anyway, I hope you won't regret it," she added. "Don't worry, I won't regret it," Tamara replied with a smile. Tamara spent the following months trying to regain her figure and dove back into the business with full force. Once back in shape, she quickly became a sensation again. It turned out that most of her clients had missed her company during her absence and were thrilled to see her again, never knowing why she had disappeared. Tamara was radiant, moving from one call to another, from one bed to another, earning more money than ever. She had become the queen of high-end companionship. However, something happened to Bose that changed her life. She had a near-death experience with a client who turned out to be a ritualist, and by God's intervention, she was saved. Bose had received a call from a new client who seemed very wealthy and offered to pay 3 times her usual rate. Excited, she rushed to meet this potential client. As she left her house, a group of evangelists stopped her at the gate, wanting to share the word of God with her. Bose hesitated, as she was already late for her appointment. She always liked to make a good first impression, but this time, the evangelists insisted, feeling an urgent need to deliver a message of salvation. Annoyed, Bose lost her patience and began insulting them. Passers-by joined her in driving the evangelists away. When the commotion subsided, Bose realized she was already 45 minutes late. Furious, she rushed to the address the client had given her. Upon arriving at the gate, the guard refused to let her in, explaining that the boss had ordered that no one, not even his own mother, be allowed to enter. Bose was disappointed. She tried calling the client, but his number was unreachable. Furious, she headed to a club to clear her mind. At the club, she met her colleagues who were discussing their work. They talked about their lucky friend Thomas, who had met a very wealthy chief who had promised to pay 3 times her rate. Intrigued, Bose asked if this chief lived at Utaka Resort. When they confirmed, Bose realized Thomas had taken her client. Angry, she vowed to get revenge on both Thomas and the evangelists. The next morning, the city was shaken by news that a horribly mutilated body had been found on a main road in Utaka, missing all its private parts. The body was identified as Thomas Anderson, a victim of ritual killers. Bose, shocked, dropped her coffee cup upon hearing the news. As she followed the case, she realized she had been saved from the hands of those killers. She cried out in relief, and from that day, she abandoned her life as a companion. Bose sought out the evangelists, apologized to them, and was baptized. When she announced her conversion to Tamara, Tamara was surprised but wasn't ready to give up her luxurious lifestyle. "Don't worry, Bose. I'll be very careful," she told her. Bose tried to persuade her, but Tamara refused to change her lifestyle, enjoying her opulence. Bose returned to the village of Kureru to start her life anew. She resumed her studies despite her age and focused on spiritual matters. Meanwhile, Tamara reached the peak of her business. By her late 20s, she was receiving constant calls and earning more money than ever, buying houses, properties, and going on vacations around the world. Everything seemed perfect. However, as the years passed and Tamara aged, her clientele began to dwindle. Men were seeking younger women, and Tamara, approaching her 30s, was barely getting clients anymore. Her luxurious lifestyle began to fade, and she gradually lost interest in this way of life. She no longer felt the same joy she had at the start of her career. Tamara felt lost and completely alone. During this period of dwindling clients, she began to realize just how alone she truly was. All her friends who used to visit her had disappeared, and the men who once rushed to answer her calls now ignored her. Worse still, she felt an immense void inside her. Tamara decided to return to Kureru to see her parents. Upon her arrival, they were thrilled and excited to see her again. The entire village welcomed her warmly, and her parents were even more eager to host her after so many years. Tamara had become a well-known figure in Kureru, and because of her, every parent wanted to send their children to the city. A few days after arriving in the village, she decided to visit her Aunt Bose, whom she hadn't seen or heard from in years. When she knocked on the door, a little girl about 6 years old opened it, followed closely by Bose and 2 other young boys. Tamara exclaimed, "Bose!" The 2 women embraced. Tamara was confused. Bose explained that she had gotten married a few years after leaving Utica, and the 3 children Tamara saw were hers. Her husband, an evangelist, was currently on a trip. He was the same man who had stopped her from going to the chief's place years ago. "What a small world," Tamara exclaimed multiple times, shocked. She was happy for Bose, but deep down, her heart was filled with sadness. She had finally understood what was missing in her life, a family. But even if she wanted to get married now, she couldn't. The dark truth she had hidden for years caught up with her, and she burst into tears at Bose's house. Bose, stunned, tried to understand what was wrong. "Bose, I've ruined everything," Tamara said, crying. "I can't get married even if I wanted to," she added, sobbing. "Don't say that, Tamara. There's nothing the Lord can't do. He did it for me. "He can do it for you," Bose replied, trying to comfort her. "You don't understand, Bose. I don't have a uterus," Tamara said, breaking down again. The truth was that during her years as a party queen in Utaka, Tamara had gotten pregnant multiple times after her first pregnancy. She had become a regular at abortion clinics, and during one of those procedures, she lost her uterus due to an incompetent doctor. At first, she didn't think it was a big deal, believing it simply meant she wouldn't get pregnant again, which would benefit her work. But as she grew older, she began to realize the folly of her actions. As Tamara wept, Bose took her hand and said, "Let's pray." They prayed together, and Tamara gave her life to Christ at that moment. After the prayer, Bose suggested she look for her daughter. Tamara was surprised. "How and where could I find her after abandoning her over 10 years ago?" Bose encouraged her to try before jumping to conclusions. Before returning to Utaka, Tamara gathered the courage to confess her wrongs to her parents. They were shocked, but above all, forgave her and wished her luck in finding their granddaughter. Tamara returned to Utaka and found the street where the orphanage used to be. But the building was no longer there. A passerby told her the place had been sold a few years ago, and the orphanage had been relocated to another state. Heartbroken, Tamara returned to Kureru defeated, knowing her daughter was probably somewhere in the world without the slightest idea of her mother's existence because of the bad choices she had made. She recalled all of Bose's warnings, remembering how she had refused to keep the baby, naively thinking it would hinder her activities. Now she saw herself as foolish, a bad example, and someone unworthy of being a mother. Upon returning to Utaka with the sad news, her parents and Bose embraced her, assuring her that life still had much to offer. Although Tamara had repented and become a devoted Christian, she spent most of her life regretting her past. She donated most of her money to orphanages across the state and founded her own organization for abandoned children. She launched a program to recruit young women and raise awareness about the dangers of a risky lifestyle, using her own experiences as an example. This initiative led to the repentance of hundreds of women living on the streets. Tamara became an example for most women in Kureru and Utaka. Though the city had tested her, she proved that as long as one is alive, one can always rise again. Tamara's story reminds us that the pursuit of wealth and instant pleasure can often lead us away from life's deeper truths. Through her choices and mistakes, she learned that no material wealth can compensate for the lack of true human connection and fundamental values. We must keep in mind that true happiness lies not only in material possessions or superficial pleasures, but in inner peace, repentance, and reconciliation with oneself and others. If you've watched this video until the end, show us your support by leaving a flag in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with those you'd like to see grow and learn. Every subscription and share helps us continue to provide inspiring and enriching content. Thank you for your support.